Well, let's just get started real quick and then we can roll through memories because I'm excited to hear what you
Sure,
remember versus what I do.
sure.
Welcome to another edition of the S.E.M podcast. I'm Zack Hewlett with my co-host Jack Bryce, and today we are joined by Sister Kate Reed. Kate, where are you joining us from tonight?
St. George, Utah, down in
nice.
the high desert.
How's St. George treating you these days?
Wonderfully. I've been here, well, off and on for 9 years. I
Okay.
house sat for a companion that I served with in Poland. She was on another mission to Australia. So I
Wow.
house sat for her, fell in love with St. George. So after I served another mission in Louisiana, which was my third and last, my sister and I bought a house here in St. George.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, you checked the boxes for us up front. Tell us about your anticipation of serving a mission and when you learned how you learned that you were going to serve in Scotland, because I'm sure it's a little bit different than us young men and women.
Well, I think it's probably pretty interesting for me because, I had lived in Germany as a young person. I lived there twice because my dad was in the service.
Oh,
And
wow.
I got a mission call to Germany and I was quite excited. In fact, it was Germany, Munich, Austria, which was an area I had lived in twice. And 2 weeks before I was supposed to report to the MTC, with all my bags packed and everything ready to go, the stake president called me and said, "How strong is your testimony, Sister Reed?" I, thinking he wanted me to talk in the upcoming stake conference, and knowing I was ready to walk out the door to catch a plane, I wasn't worried. And I said, "Oh, my testimony's great." And he said, "Well, I've just had a call from the mission department, and they've changed your mission call from Germany to Scotland." And
Wow.
I was half disappointed and half excited because who doesn't want to go to Scotland?
Yeah.
So that's how I got that call, and I was very excited about it. I, like President Vriens, was under the misconception that I didn't need to learn a new language to serve in Scotland. And for the first 2.5 months, I maybe understood every third word. But I had a great companion in Sister Jones, and
Okay.
she helped me a lot because she had been out for 9 months already.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you still left in that 2 weeks time frame?
No, actually, the second call was put off a little bit, so I went ahead and went to Utah because I'd given up my apartment, and I went to Utah and stayed with friends, and had a month's vacation while I got ready to go.
Oh my gosh. A month's vacation. That's amazing. Well, catch us up since you've been home. I know you said you served a few more missions, and I can't believe how busy you've been. So tell us about after Scotland, and then we'll go back to the mission together.
I came home for 15 months, and then I went to Poland. And if you think Scotland's a surprise calling, Poland just knocked me right off my chair. I first thought it was Portland. But Scottish is not nearly as difficult a language to learn as Polish. And with seniors, you don't get any time in the MTC. You get a week and then you're dropped in country and you learn as you go. And I loved that mission. And then I came home, and I was home for 5 years, taking care of some medical issues and other things. And then I went to serve in Louisiana, which was as foreign as I could be without a passport.
Yeah. Was that before or after Katrina?
It was after.
Okay.
It was about 10 years after, but they speak of pre-Katrina and post-Katrina. It's almost like BC and AD to them. I mean, made a huge difference to them.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, really enjoyed that mission as well. Wound up serving, I was working for the regional self-reliance manager, and he opened self-reliance in 12 states while I was there.
Wow.
It was a big challenge and a lot of fun.
So your primary objective was to teach self-reliance to people while you were there, or was it on top of
No,
other things?
my primary objective was to assist him in opening the areas. So we we turned his office, our office, into a small printing factory because materials were hard to come by. We set up, I don't know if you're familiar with self-reliance, but they usually have a stake or multi-stake fireside to explain self-reliance and introduce the different classes to people. And then they choose and you get things set up for them. Then you have the responsibility of going around to various stakes and just sitting in on their classes and making sure things are being done the way the first presidency set them up. It was a lot of fun.
That's great. Those are great courses.
Yes, they are.
Very much needed in our world today.
I've tried to keep in touch with some of the people that I've known in the missions. I've been really saddened to see the amount of inactivity that's
Yeah.
taken over both among the members and the missionaries. And as far as the senior sisters are concerned, those I've served with, Sister Jones, that I think most of you have known, is in a memory care facility in Burley, Idaho. And Sister Meese has passed away from ALS. Sister Siegmiller is still in the Salt Lake area doing fine. Those are the ones I know for sure about.
Good. Well, you hopped into the mission perfectly. Tell us about the areas that you served in.
My first area was Beith, just south of Paisley. And I think that's when I got to know you, was when I was serving in Beith. I served there twice, actually. And it's a very small village that's a kind of a bedroom community for Paisley. And it was such a culture shock in some ways. You know, you had a greengrocer and a butcher. The butcher had been in the same place since 1753, the same family in the same location. Small enough town that everybody knew us. And I called the library one day to see if there were computers available, and the lady said, "Oh, you're one of our missionary ladies, aren't you?" Just by the sound of my voice. So it was a lovely place to serve. I enjoyed it. It was a small branch, and we had a nice little chapel there. But in the beginning, we used to go to Kilmarnock for district meetings, and we'd ride one of those little short buses that went down the one-lane road where you'd have to stop in the middle and flash the bus lights because there might be a car coming the other direction. And that was always interesting to do because we usually had to start really early in the morning in the dark and go to Kilmarnock for district meeting and then go back. And our zone meetings were in Irvine. And then we switched when I was back in Beith the second time. We were meeting in Johnston, and that's when I knew you, Zack.
Yeah, that's right. Just I skipped over this part, but remind me the time frame that you served in Scotland. Do you recall that?
2004 to 2006.
And do you know what month you got there and left?
I know that I left in, I think, May.
Okay.
It was either the end of April, the beginning of May. And I remember that Elder Nelson was coming with his new wife. And I was really disappointed I wasn't going to get to see them. And President Vriens says, "Well, you could extend." But I didn't do that. If he'd have asked me 2-3 months before that, I would have said absolutely yes, because I couldn't stand the thought of leaving. But when you get right down to the wire, you're so tired that you're ready to go.
Yeah. So you
But
went home when then? Because that was, I want to remember. I'm recalling. I want to say it was like March or April of 2006 that we had that trip down to Preston.
yeah, that's when I went home. Was
So it was
April. Was April, just before you made the trip.
okay.
And I got there in the fall.
Okay.
October, I think it was.
All right. That makes
That I
sense.
got to, and I didn't get to climb Pratt's Hill when I first got there. I hadn't slept in 36 hours, so I was in pretty bad shape. And so they put me to bed and introduced me to my companion, Sister Jones, the next morning. And then they sent us off to Beith with a couple of APs. And then when Sister Sigmiller came, and she was the third sister I trained, she wanted to climb, and I got to climb with her.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and that was lovely. And then, of course, I got to go up the night before I left Scotland. I went up, I think there were 9 of us. And it only took 2 APs to get me to the top. They'd forgotten a flashlight, and we were trying to
Oh
go
my gosh.
by telephone, by the screen light. And
Oh, wow.
and that's a little bit rough up at the top, and I'm not a young chick.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it was kind of fun. But I served in Beith, and then I went to Airdrie for 7.5 months, and then I went back to Beith, and then I went to Inverness. Those were the 3 areas I served in. And I loved them all for very different reasons. I mean, Inverness is so gorgeous. The only thing that was wrong with Inverness was I lost my accent, my Scottish accent, because people up there don't have much of an accent. If they have anything, it's the Queen's English, because they have a lot of retired English people up there, and they have a lot of tourism. But the only person with an accent that I could really get into was a woman who was a transplant from Paisley.
Is that right?
Because Ayrshire has a much heavier accent than some of the other areas. But we spent a lot of time in Edinburgh because we would go in with President Vriens would call us in for different things.
Yeah.
Seniors conference, sisters conference, whatever. We did have one really interesting incident while I was at the mission home. We had a robbery. A man broke in one night when all 4 of the senior sisters were staying overnight in the mission home after a seniors conference. And he had been in every single room in the mission home, including the vault. But he made the mistake of going into the president's room about the time the president got up, probably to go to the bathroom. And I heard him yell, "What are you doing in here?" And then this thundering down the stairs and yelling. And it was really interesting. President and Sister Vriens trapped him in the kitchen, one on each side of that big island.
Oh, wow.
And of course, he chose Sister Vriens thinking that would be the easy way to get out. But he bloodied her nose to get out. And he got past her, but then she got up and was chasing him down the driveway in her pink pajamas. But
oh my word.
We all said, "What would you do if you had caught him, Sister Vriens?" She said, "I would have said, 'You naughty boy, what do you think you're doing?'" Anyway, it was interesting.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sister Vriens had the strength of a few men. I'm amazed. Obviously, person who doesn't know her would challenge her, but for someone like myself, never would I challenge Sister Vriens.
Yeah. She's not only strong, she's determined as well. But the police came and they said we were all very, very blessed because he said all of these housebreakers in this area are heroin addicts and they would kill you at the drop of a hat. But this man obviously was being very careful not to hurt anybody, because he could have hurt President Vriens, he could have hurt her. He went into the elders' room, and all he took from them was a badge and a white book, but not a bit of money did he take from any of them. He stole from everybody else but them. And miraculously, none of them woke up, or they would have put up a fight and somebody would have been hurt. So, you know, the Lord is in the details.
Absolutely. Wow, what a memory. Because
Yeah,
that was not
I
something we
can't
haven't heard.
remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I can remember 10 years ago quite easily.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, are there any of the missionaries that you grew fond of while you were in the mission and enjoyed seeing them progress in their missionary efforts that you can recall?
Other than you?
Besides me, yes. I
Yes.
was a basket case and I needed some serious help.
Well, no, you weren't a basket case. You just had some challenges. And they were they would have been challenges for anybody.
Yes,
But-
100%.
But you know, it's funny. I'm not really close to the missionaries from Scotland. I have a little bit of communication with Sister Sigmiller. I used to commune a lot with Sharon Jones, but the last time I spoke with her, I cried for 20 minutes after I got off the phone. So I haven't called her in a while. And I used to speak with Sister Mies even after she got ALS, but she got to the point where she couldn't speak anymore. So
Wow.
then I know that she's passed away because I can't reach her anymore. But I will tell you this, gentlemen, I have 2 guest rooms and I live in a really pretty part of the country. So if you are ever passing through St. George and you need a place to stay.
That's very generous of you, Sister
Yes.
Reed. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
St. George is a little bit further away than it used to be for me now that we're
you're
in
in Denver.
Yeah.
I go to Denver every now and then. I had planned to be there for a bit this fall, but that plan has fallen through. But I still travel.
Anytime you're coming through.
Yeah. I still travel quite a bit. And I try to keep in touch with the people I knew on the mission. There was one family in Airdrie that I was very close to. They had 7 children, and they were kind of the backbone of the ward, but they've not only gone inactive, they've gone, to the point of calling the church a cult. So I have no animosity to them, but I don't have a lot of dealings with them. Saddens me greatly.
Yeah, I mean, I recall quite a bit while I was in Scotland how hard the adversary worked on both the missionaries and those that were in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And, like anything else, it's not an easy faith to follow.
No.
When you are surrounded by such influences that could truly take you away in the snap of a finger. And, I watched many of them continue to progress and be stalwart, and I know how hard that has to be. And I think those that are more stalwart in the church still there have some family connections that are in the church, and there's a little bit of generational uplift from those before them that continue to help them along that path. But for those that are a little bit more on the independent side of things, it is definitely a challenge that I don't envy. I mean, it would be very, very difficult to be.
And if you think Scotland is difficult, you should try Poland.
Oh, I mean, I can't even imagine that.
Because in Poland, if you join the church, you face the possibility of not just losing your friends, but your family and your job. Those
Really?
things, yes, because it's an extremely Catholic country. And just depending on how understanding the people around you are, you have to have a really strong faith to join
Yeah.
the church and to stay in the church. But they're wonderful people, so.
Yeah,
And
100%.
you know what's really interesting about that? I know this isn't about Scotland, but it shows how the Lord can take the most horrible circumstances and use them to his benefit. Poland has a very small percentage of a small group of people that are active. And the Ukraine had such a strong base that they have a temple built in the Ukraine. And most of the Ukrainian saints have had to flee to Poland. And Poland was their choice place to go because it's close and they want to go home. But they've taken all that strength and that activity to the Polish saints. And so our former mission president from Poland is Danish, but he's also an area authority 70 over that area. And he said it's really strengthening the church in Poland. So even in the worst of things, there's hope.
Yeah, that's very interesting. What
Well,
a blessing.
and one thing, I mean, his episode is coming up, but we talked to Doug Poland just a few. When was that? Sunday? My
Sunday.
gosh,
Yep.
days are blending together. And he shared with us a story about helping, Ukrainian refugees. That I won't spoil. I mean, obviously, people will hear his story before that, but it was an amazing moment that he shared where he was standing at the border in Poland with a van and a sign saying, rides wherever you need to go. And a family from Ukraine, the mother was not a member for the church, but she pointed him out and said, "Is he a part of your church?" And, and then they had conversation and approached Doug and he said, "Yeah, where are you going?" And the daughter showed her phone to Doug, and it was the address of a branch in Kharkov, and he was Krakow. Thank you. I don't speak Polish, so, but
that's okay.
It was pretty cool to hear that the Spirit has unique ways of helping us identify those that are within the same scope of who we are, and anyway, it was a really cool story. You'll enjoy.
I know those people that run that operation there in Krakow. The man who used to be the district president for that area is a fairly young man who went to BYU, and he works for an American car company that's producing cars there in that area, and they have set up huge refugee operations to help them there. It's nice to see them in operation. Anyway.
Wow. That is really incredible. Well,
where did you serve, Jack?
I served, I must have moved kind of around you. So I served in Dumfries, Cumbernauld, Peterhead, and Falkirk. And then my last area was Glenrothes.
Very nice. I've been to some of those places, but didn't serve there.
So the sisters who came out with me, it was like Sister Samus, Sister Bogomolova.
I know both of them.
Yep.
In fact, I ran into Sister Sammy's, who has a different name now, in, where were we? We were in Silverdale, on the Kitsap Peninsula in Washington State. And we were at a conference that Sister Sherry Dew was speaking at. And I looked at her and I thought, I know this woman. And I walked up to her and I said, "You Sister Sammy's?" And she said, "Well, not anymore." And I said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And she said, "No, you look familiar, but I don't know who you are." But we talked a bit. She's doing well.
Gosh.
Sister Bogomolova married a missionary, didn't she?
Yeah. Kevin Vertigan.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Don't they live in Belgium or something?
I believe so. Is that right,
Yeah.
Jack? Do you know?
Yep. I think that's right.
I know that that's where Kevin is from. And this is just a funny story, and I'll share it again when I talk to him. But I remember the first time I met him, and I probably offended him so badly, but he said he was from Belgium, and I said, "Oh, Germany," and he was like, "No," because clearly I didn't learn European geography. I learned North American geography, and
or history either, or you would never make that mistake.
No, absolutely not. And so I had to take my foot out of my mouth pretty quickly when I first met him. Hopefully he still thought highly of me, but I offended him really badly the first time I met him.
Yeah.
It's too funny.
It's okay. They're used to dumb Americans who don't know anything.
Yeah.
But, when they see the size of the country, I know some of my Scottish friends who had been to the States said the thing they couldn't get over was the size of the country.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like more than Europe altogether. And we just have to be really flexible because our accents are different. We have different words from one area to another, but we're used to being that flexible.
Yeah, someone explained it to me that here 100 miles is a short distance and 100 years is a long time, and there it's the opposite, right?
It's the opposite. I was at a friend's house in Beith for supper one night, and when I was leaving, I said, "I love the tiles in your foyer," and he said, "Those tiles are older than your country."
And I'm sure they were handmade and absolutely
correct. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, just really interesting to see the different takes on things. And we can, with our openness and our boisterousness and our pushiness, be really offensive to people without meaning to be. In Poland, if you say hello to people on the street, the young people not so much, but they haven't lived under communism. But a lot of the people who grew up under Nazism and then communism, it's your head down, your mouth shut. You don't talk to strangers, And I've had people say, when I've said in Polish hello, had them say, "Do I know you?" Like, "Excuse me?"
Yeah. It's pretty amazing the differences in culture as you can go a few hundred miles one direction or another in Europe. It's very interesting.
Totally different. But when you understand their history and what they've been through, when missionaries are called to Poland, they were asked to read Michener's Poland, which is, a tome, but it's really, really helpful in understanding the psyche and the way Poles think. I would sometimes be sitting in church looking at different people and thinking, "Oh, that's who you are," because you could recognize the character. But anyway, we just need to be more open to learning about each other.
Agreed. 100%.
And the Scots are I had one Scottish companion, Sister Mackay Meese was a Scot. And I have a tendency, I don't like confrontation. And so if things become confrontational, I would walk away. And she said to me one day, "You stand right here. We're going to settle this because we both work for the same man," and we did. And we got to be very, very close. But it's because she was totally Scot, even though she'd immigrated at 15. And for her, you talked about the elephant in the room. And the toilet was the toilet. It wasn't the restroom. That's the way the Scots are, isn't it?
Yeah. And more than one person, when I asked to use the bathroom, they'd be like, "Why? You're going to take a bath?"
Yeah. If you ask for the restroom, they direct you to the funeral parlor. So you have to call things what they are. That's just how they are. And I came to really respect that about them. Sometimes it's uncomfortable for us because that's not our culture, but it is theirs.
I remember one story. I was serving in Dunfermline at the time, and it was a family that I was incredibly close to, and their daughter had gotten baptized while we were there. And just before I was leaving, I don't know what the conversation was, but I apologized because I had some pimples that I'd picked on my face. And I said, "Yeah, it's a problem. I tend to pick my face a lot." And John, the younger, said, "Oh, you pick your face. Why don't you pick a better one?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's perfect Scottish cheek."
Yes.
That and that's just how they are. It was truly exactly what I needed to understand. Is your word means something different to me, and I'm going to use it against you in some way, whether it's joking or not. And sometimes that bluntness was very forward, and we got the picture really quickly. But unless we had a good relationship with people,
I know that I was in Inverness, and one of the women who was very missionary oriented and had a good relationship with all of us had asked my companion and I, Sister Sigmiller, to go to lunch with her. She was taking a friend to lunch, and she said, "The only rule I'm going to give you is you cannot bring up the gospel, because I want her to meet you and to get to know you as people, but you can't teach her the gospel. You just have to leave that alone." So we're almost to the end of lunch, and we've had just this really enjoyable lunch with this woman. And she was in a wheelchair. She was spina bifida. She was very smart and very personable. And all of a sudden she said, "So, tell me about these lessons that you teach." And I thought, I didn't bring this up. So we talked just a little bit, and then we asked her if she'd like to take the lessons. And I wound up teaching her until I was ready to leave. And I remember kneeling at her wheelchair the last day I was there, because I left from Inverness to a home. And I was kneeling to give her a hug. And she said very quietly in my ear, "You've been a mother to me. And I wish I could do this for you, but I'm just not ready." And I said to her, "Please just take your time." And she wound up being baptized. And Inverness was not easy because they had a font under the floor. They had to take parts of the floor up, but that's how they baptized people. And with her, they had to lower her wheelchair down into the font and baptize her that way. But she was baptized, and I was very grateful for that. There were a couple of boys that we taught in Beith that Sister Jones had started teaching, and they wound up being baptized. And I had another woman in Inverness, and she was a Donny Osmond baptism for sure. She was such a fan. and one of the elders that we replaced was Elder Osmond, and he had taken a Book of Mormon to her, and I think she wanted him to come back and baptize her, but I think he'd already gone home by then. He was there with Elder Partridge, and
yeah. So Elder Osmond was in Jack's group.
Yep.
Yeah. Your birth group?
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he was a good guy. I saw him at one reunion after he was married. I saw him. But he and Sister Jones were in the same. She was probably in your birth group because she was at the MTC with Elder Osmond.
She must have been then.
Mm-hmm.
There was a senior sister. I just didn't recall her name.
Yeah, Sister Jones, and she didn't. She took no prisoners. She was an Idaho farm girl, and she kept up with everybody. And she had been through the regular MTC, where the MTC president gave no quarter to the senior missionaries. They followed all the rules. They did all the things. And I went through the senior MTC, where we had a class in how to use the computer and, told to take naps and that kind of thing. And the first time I pulled out my laptop in front of her, I thought she was going to have a heart attack. Does President Vriens know you have that? And I said, yes. And she says, well, you're not allowed that. And I said, yes. In the MTC, they teach seniors how to do this. But she'd been through the other MTC. And when I first went in to check my email, she said, you can't do that. It's not P-Day. And I said, so Sister Jones, when you get mail through the slot in the door there, do you put it aside until Tuesday? Well, no. And I said, this is how I get all my mail. So, we came to a meeting of the minds on it, but it was very hard for her because she'd been trained like a regular missionary.
I do remember now on the train ride up, Sister Jones, the train stopped in Lockerbie, and she was the only one that knew the history of the Lockerbie disaster.
Lockerbie.
She pointed that out to us, all us young folks. And then I ended up serving there as my first area headed back that way. So that was very helpful. But
it would be because it's like Hurricane Katrina to them.
It made a huge difference to those people. That's where they marked time from.
Yeah. Anyway, life is good and it goes on, and the missions, all of them made me a stronger person. Weaker in body, stronger in spirit.
Yeah.
But I've since received a new ankle and 2 new knees and 6 screws in my back, and so I am a new woman.
You're ready to go again.
Yeah, I would go again if I weren't getting this old, but next month I'll be a year from 80.
You're still young.
Young at heart, anyway.
That's right.
Living the dream in St. George.
Yeah. We found this house that we absolutely fell in love with, and then we found out it was in the senior community. And we're certainly old enough. My sister was 2 years older than I. We thought neither one of us really wanted to live in the senior community, but we loved the house. So we bought it. And now we love the senior. Well, I love the senior community. She did, but she just passed away in May. But we had a great 4 years here together. And
that's great. My great-grandmother retired there. And,
really?
She worked in the St. George Temple, I think, for about 17 years in her retirement. But she lived in before they had all the senior citizen communities that they have now there, she lived about a block from the tabernacle. And we would go visit her every summer and visit all the church history sites around St. George. And I love that area.
Yeah. And it's grown so much. Where do you live, Jack?
So I live near Zack. I'm north of Denver.
Oh, you're in Denver, in the Denver area.
Yeah,
See, I have a
was.
son that lives in above Central City and a son that lives in Arvada. So I do
Oh.
occasionally come to the Denver
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, not far away from us at all.
Yeah.
Yep. I work right next door to Arvada, so.
Uh-huh.
But I was
Not
in
bad.
St. George. I actually interviewed for a job there with the Walmart distribution center, but drove around a little bit, saw the new temple being built in Washington,
Mhm.
and it is just, it's grown like crazy there.
It's exploding, just exploding. Used to be a wide spot in the road. Now it's just huge. I wonder where all the water is going to come from, but they say there's plenty. So I guess we'll see. I was at a home in Washington out near the temple, and they said that there is so much water under the Washington area that they have to be careful about drilling down.
Because one drill might loosen the whole thing and it'll float away.
Well, not so much that as it will.
That's right. You've got you got the volcanic stuff up there.
Yeah, it is volcanic. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, Navajo Lake was formed from lava and has lava vents in the bottom. It's just rainwater and it goes out to feed the rivers. It's really an interesting geophysical mess up there.
When did you live in Washington
State?
Yeah.
I lived there before I came to Scotland.
Oh, really?
That's where I was living when I went to Scotland.
Okay.
I was living in a place called Hewlett.
Yeah.
Which is south of Tacoma, or south of Seattle, north of Tacoma. And then I also have lived in Kent and Paulsbo, Paulsbo is out on the Kitsap Peninsula.
Okay. Yeah, I lived in Central Oregon for a period of my life before I moved to Colorado. And so
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
I had a couple of instances able to drive up to Washington State and, see the mountains and Mount Hood and Mount Rainier and all those. So I remember those parts of life as lots of fun.
So Scotland was your first mission, right?
Yeah.
How did you decide that you wanted to serve a mission?
I have wanted to serve a mission my whole life, even before I was LDS. I wanted to be a missionary when I was a teenager. And I'd always had a close relationship with my Heavenly Father and the Savior. Somewhere in my adulthood, I think mostly after my divorce, I kind of lost track of that. And I got to the point where I wasn't sure there was a God and I wasn't sure I cared. And then I ran into, I went to work for a Latter-day Saint woman. She was the office manager in the social work clinic where I went to work at Madigan Hospital, military hospital. And the first day of work, she was leaning against the radiator on a rainy September morning. She looked at me and she said, "Well, 2 things you need to know about me. I like it warm, and I'm a Mormon, and you're going to have to get used to both of those things." And she had me converted within 3 weeks.
Oh, my word.
I mean, it wasn't her. She handed me a Book of Mormon, and in those days, the flyleaf had Moroni's challenge on it. And that was enough to convert me. The spirit was so strong, it about knocked me over. And I hated it because I knew that once I made that decision, there were a lot of life changes that had to be made because, believe it or not, elders, I was a heavy smoker and a fairly heavy drinker. And I knew all of that was out the window and I needed to straighten up my act. But you can't deny it when you know it's true. And the only thing that really can tell you it's true is the spirit. Anything else you can argue against.
Well, that must have helped you, though, relate to the people of Scotland a little more.
I think so. Yeah. That and the fact
and probably Poland too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that I was a parent helped too, because I think explaining Heavenly Father's plan of happiness and how Heavenly Father feels about his children. When you're talking parent to parent, you can relate that to their feelings as a parent. You know, that you want all your kids to be happy, even if they don't do things exactly the way you want them to. So that's kind of been a big help to me. Plus, old ladies can get in where young elders can't.
Absolutely.
Any day, you know. I had some young elders that got really frustrated because people would say, "No, I want them to teach me." You know, we had one senior sister. Well, she may have been in her late 40s. She had a 17-year-old son who was LDS, and she'd been coming to church with him, and the young elders wanted to teach her. And the first Sunday we showed up, she looked across the foyer and she said, "I want them to teach me." So we were teaching her, and that was a really interesting experience because she'd been living with Bobby. She'd been married and divorced, and then she had 2 children by that marriage. And then she'd been living with Bobby for something like 22 years. And they had the 17-year-old son. So we're getting to the lesson on chastity, and we wonder how in the world this is going to go, because we've got to tell her, you either have to get married or move out. It's just, you know. And halfway through the lesson, we didn't even have to say anything. She said, "I've been living in sin for the last 20-some years. I've got to get married." And we said, "How's Bobby going to take this?" And she said, "Bobby's been trying to get me to marry him for 22 years. I'm the one that's been dragging my feet."
Oh my gosh, that's
She
hilarious.
tried it once and she didn't want to try it again. So there we were, Sister Mies and I, planning a wedding and a baptism, you know, one after the other.
That's
And at her
fantastic.
baptism, a week after her wedding, at her baptism, she had 62 people there. I mean, at her request, her family, his family, friends. And at Christmas, she gave everybody a Book of Mormon and the family proclamation. She was so gung ho.
Oh, wow.
It was really neat. And the last I heard of her, she was in the Stake Relief Society presidency. But, you know, it's hard to find out if you haven't been able to keep in touch. And I wrote to all these people, but didn't get responses from them. So,
That's a great story, though.
yeah.
Well, hopefully those that are listening in Scotland can track down some of these people and share your experiences, because,
Yeah.
you know, you never know. That's really one of the beauties of this passion project that Jack and I have taken on, is the connectedness that we all continue to find between
Right.
each other.
And, you know, it's like I said, none of my kids are active in the church. They're all wonderful human beings, and I love them dearly. And when the gentleman in Scotland posted on Facebook his feelings about the church, and you know, very angry about it, and one woman said, "That's us finished. You know, I don't want to hear from you anymore." And I posted back that none of my kids, I mean, all of my kids have left the church. I mean, they're excommunicated, but they've left the church. And I still love them completely. And my feelings for other people who leave are not going to change either.
Yeah.
And I think Heavenly Father feels the same way. He may be saddened, but he doesn't stop loving us.
Sure.
It's very, very true. Well, Sister Reed, you already shared one experience at the mission home. What are your memories of President and Sister Vriens?
I remember President Vriens being very military, very spit and polish, very sometimes stern, but very loving, very kind. he had a great sense of humor when he allowed it to come through. We shared a love for Snellgrove's burnt almond fudge ice cream. And I am
right?
so grateful that Snellgrove's is back in operation and they have burnt almond fudge ice cream again. The grandchildren have brought it all back. And we have one here in St. George. And for Sister Vriens, one of my favorite pictures of her is coming into zone conference with the pig nose and that big flowered hat and talking to the elders about how they can't cram all of their laundry and their pillows and their blankets into the washer and have it go and have it get your clothes clean. Anyway, I mean, I had great memories with them because they had stake meetings in Beith about once a month. And when they were coming into Beith, I used to make a big pot of soup because there were no restaurants they could go to. And they would come to our apartment and we would feed them. And one night, the first night they were there, Sister Vriens and Sister Jones and I went into the big bedroom. We're sitting on the bed talking after we did the dishes, and we went into the living room, and President Vriens was sound asleep. He was just exhausted, but he'd found a comfortable chair and just went to sleep. But one night, they came for that conference, and they said, we have the zone leaders with us. Is that all right? And we said, oh, sure, bring them along. And it was Elder Webb and Elder Osmond. And we fed them soup, and they got finished. And then I told them, okay, elders, it's your turn to do the dishes. And they did. And the next day I was at the post office, and the women in the post office had a newspaper that showed that Elder Osmond was coming to Irvine to preach the gospel. They didn't realize that he was already there. And I said, oh, yes, right, he is. I didn't tell them that he had been in my apartment washing dishes the night before, or they would have been camping on my doorstep waiting to meet him.
They would have wanted the sponge as a souvenir.
Yes, as a souvenir, I'm sure. Anyway, poor kid had to be sent all the way to the Falkland. No, not Falkland Islands. What were the islands?
Shetland.
Shetland Islands, to get him away from the crowds. Anyway,
we have talked to him on this podcast, and it was so interesting to hear his experience because it was so different than ours.
Oh yeah,
and Jack and I both reflected too. We were like, I had no clue, the level of status that the Osmonds had until I was in Scotland.
Oh yeah. In Europe, very much so, much more than. Well, in Vegas, they've got a pretty good status now because they've had a residency for several years, and we're the number one show for many years. But I enjoyed serving with him because he was a very nice young man and a hard worker. So,
agreed.
There were very few missionaries that I didn't enjoy serving with.
Yeah. Well, I'll just recollect with you, honestly, my time in Johnston when I first met you. Honestly, you saved my mission, and
it's a tough time for you.
It was. I mean, more than anything, it was just spending time with someone who, interestingly enough, was very much like me, but I didn't understand that until after the fact. And so because we butted heads so much, I didn't like being the second wheel on the bicycle, type of a thing, because that just wasn't my personality type. But all the opportunities that we had at district meetings and interviews and zone conferences. I mean, you were always just so loving and caring and gave me big hugs and just said, "Hey, it's just a little bit of time. You'll get through
Yeah.
it,"
Yeah.
and I did, and I'm grateful for that because it was just one of those experiences that we talked to a missionary the other day who said he had a companion that said a mission is $1 million experience you wouldn't pay 2 pennies to do again.
Yeah.
And that's something that I reflect on with my companion at the time. It was hard, it was tough, and
Mm-hmm.
but we got through it. And then I got a 4-week vacation in the Orkney Isles, and that was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. You don't have a whole lot of people in the Orkneys either, do you?
No, but I had a trunky missionary and Elder George Willis that made life enjoyable for that
Mm-hmm.
time that I was there. It
Yeah.
was not easy, and it was November, December time frame in the
Mm-hmm.
Orkney Isles, and
Yeah.
it was
A little bit windy, was it?
it was windy and dark most of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Yeah.
it was a great experience, and I appreciated that from
Yeah.
that time from him because it kind of rejuvenated me.
Sister Siegmiller and I begged President Vriens to send us to Lewis.
Hmm.
Begged him to send us to Lewis. And he said, "No, sisters, I'm not going to do that to you, but I will send you to Inverness." So we were really happy with that. Really happy with Inverness.
Yeah.
He had
It
sent Sister Sammy's to the Orkneys once.
Were there sisters up there? I didn't recall that. That's interesting.
Not very often, but he sent Sister Sammy's and her companion to the Orkneys at one point, and then he sent 2 young sisters, well, they were all young, to the Shetlands at one point.
Yeah, I think that was when we talked to Sister Cooper. She had,
Yep.
I think she whitewashed and trained at the same
Yeah,
time or something
yeah,
like that on
yeah.
Shetland. But yeah,
When I left Scotland, I had trained every senior sister that was there
well,
because there were 4
rightfully so.
left after me, and I had trained them all.
Trained them all.
Yeah.
Mhm. My
I didn't.
first training was twins.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I trained 2 senior sisters that came out to serve together.
And were they part of the group that went to Edinburgh to do like family history stuff? Because I don't remember.
No. They went to Airdrie, and they
Okay.
stayed in Airdrie the whole time they were there.
Well, that's why I didn't know who they were because I never made
Yeah.
it that end
Yeah.
of the mission.
Yeah.
I remember shortly after you went home, I became the Aberdeen zone leader, and so I
Uh-huh.
had the opportunity to get up to Inverness a couple of instances,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so nice to see Sister Siegmiller there. And I don't
Yeah.
recall who her companion was at the time, but
Let me think. I mean, I can see her because I was her trainer, and I can't. I have her name down somewhere, but I don't remember it right off my head.
yeah. Well, and it
When
was
you
just
talk about my good memory.
well, it was just a great blast from the past because she was always so cordial to me, just as well as you
Mhm.
were when you were
Mhm.
serving with her in Johnston, and
Mhm.
so it was nice to see her and spend some time with her and just
Mhm.
reminisce on the good old days that weren't too far behind us. But
We were coming out of a zone conference in Dumfries. Is that where we had zone conferences? We'd go, we'd get on the train in Inverness and pick up everybody on the way, stay overnight in Aberdeen, and then get a bus down to, would it be Dumfries?
Dundee.
Dundee, that's right. And we were coming out, the chapel's up on the hill, and we were walking down the hill. And one of the elders from our district was walking beside me, and he said, Sister Reed, when we heard we were getting senior sisters up there, we were really, really worried because we'd heard some horror stories. But you guys have really been a lot of fun. So we fed them all the time, and the district leaders had a key to our apartment, and we kept a pot of soup on the stove, and
Oh my
The only
gosh.
meal that they actually ever had to cook was breakfast because we
Oh
fed
man.
them all the time. Yeah.
Lucky set of
Well,
missionaries right there.
everybody put money in the pot,
Oh, okay.
groceries, and we just fed the district leader and his companion all the time,
Oh, that's awesome.
and it was nice. And when we had to go visit people in Fort William or out on the Isle of Skye, the four of us would go together in our van because we would still have plenty of miles, But it made it, an enjoyable trip with the four of us going, and we felt very safe and not worried about, if we got lost or waylaid or the car broke down. And we just had a great, great time. In fact, I have a picture of Elder. What was his last name? His name was either John Michael or Michael John, and his last name escapes me, but I think he became an AP, at least an office elder, about the time I was leaving. And he was a tall, skinny blonde. And I have a picture of him laying on the top of one of those red telephone booths out on the Isle of Skye. The same one that I have a picture of all three of us senior sisters inside that telephone booth.
Oh, that's great.
We played around.
Yeah. I mean, that was the important thing that we all learned on our missions eventually was you had to have some fun. Otherwise, it was an arduous time of our lives.
They told me in Scotland, all the young elders said, it's all about the story, Sister Reed. And that's true. If you have a story to take home at the end of it, that's a big deal. And one week, our district leader, Elder Hawkins, do you all know Elder Hawkins?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He decided that we were going to have our district meeting on the shore of Loch Ness. He had found the perfect place. You had to walk down steps to get to this rocky place he called a beach. And it was right on the lake. And it was March.
Oh.
I had every article of clothing I owned on. Thermals and leggings and everything. And we had a whiteboard, and we held our district meeting right there and it was fun. And it was all about the experience, and it was a nice spirit. And then I was supposed to give the closing prayer. And if you can picture, we're in this little alcove of the cliff, and all the elders are sitting on rocks along the cliff face. And I have to give the closing prayer, and I'm facing them, and my heels are backed up to the edge of the loch. And I have to bow my head and close my eyes.
Oh, no.
On the edge of Loch Ness. And I have a really strong sense of something in that lake. And it took everything I had to bow my head and close my eyes and say a prayer. It was not a lengthy prayer.
So you believe in Nessie?
I don't not believe in Nessie, let me put it that way. I always had a feeling, and Sister Sigmiller really wanted to take a tour boat on the lake. And we were allowed to do some of those things that you all couldn't. With Sister Bulkley and Sister Ford, I had gotten permission from President Vriens to take a boat out on Loch Lomond, a tour boat. He said, as long as it's a big boat, you can go. So we did. And she wanted to take a tour boat on Loch Ness, and every time I looked at the ads for it, I just got the creepiest feeling. Well, you have to listen to the spirit when it tells you not to do something. Who knows why I wasn't supposed to be on that lake? But I told her, you can go, but you have to go with your next companion because I can't do it.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and I'm not one that believes in ghosts. I believe in spirits, but I don't believe in ghosts.
Well, as we know, everything on earth has a spirit. So
that's right. Absolutely.
There's very much something in that lock that said, "Didn't come. I'll come and get
that's
you."
exactly. Didn't come. We were in a zone conference, the triple zone conference down in Katowice in southern Poland, and Elder Kopishka was there, and he had talked to me. Well, they'd had a leadership conference that I had to cook for, so he said it was going to be a working meeting, and they would just come out and get their soup and rolls and go back into the meeting. And so when President and Sister Ingbiao got their soup and sat down at the kitchen table, I didn't think anything of it. All the kids got their stuff and we're going back into the conference room. Elder Kopishka got his and went and sat down at the kitchen table and said, "Sit down." So I spent a little time with him. And then that night at the conference, he was talking to the elders about what an asset having senior sisters could be to the mission. And he had turned to me and he said, "What's it like to go through two missions? How do you do that?" And I said, in my best Scottish accent, "I'm a very determined woman."
That's so good.
After that, he always called me the little Scottish sister.
Oh,
Anyway,
that's golden. I love
yes,
that. Oh
yes.
my gosh.
I loved Scotland. I
Yeah.
really did. I would go back. I had people there I would love to see. But money and situations and time makes it a little difficult sometimes.
Yes, indeed. I don't have those excuses, and and I haven't gone back since after the mission.
You
so,
have plenty of money, Zach?
I mean, I have.
That might solve my lack of money problem, Jack.
I know.
Maybe I could get him to send me to Scotland. If he just doesn't have the time, I'd go for you, Zach.
I'll keep that on my list of people
You keep that on your list.
People to assist. Yes.
Actually, money is no problem for me at all since my sister passed. She left me very comfortable.
Oh,
So,
that's good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, time flies when you're having fun, and we've been talking now for about an hour and 15 minutes, and
podcast is supposed to be only an hour, maybe.
No. I mean, we've had a few that have run us close to 2 hours, so don't worry about it.
That's how I have some of my high school class gets together every 2 weeks. There's 7 of us that do a Google Duo call, and sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 2.5. Just depends on how talkative everybody is.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you making the time to come and share memories, and ultimately this is a labor of love, and I'm sure that there will be many missionaries who recall times with you and that will be so excited to hear your voice and see your face on the YouTube video. And so thank you for making their dreams come true to reconnect with you, because like you said, there's some of those sister missionaries that aren't still with us, and ultimately whether it's physically or mentally, but
spiritually,
right. Well, I would imagine their spirits are with us, that's for sure. But we really appreciate you making time for us, so thank you so much.
Happy to do it.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Jack.
Thank you. It's wonderful to meet you as well.
Yeah. Well,
have a nice evening.
Yeah, we love you, Kate. Thank you so much, and we will be in touch soon. Next time you're in Denver.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.